Okay, well, Jai Baba, everybody. Thanks for coming. We have a full, diverse day. We're going to be, this morning, studying the topic of love, and this afternoon, reveling in a dramatic, musical, visual presentation of Meher Baba's new life. So this is the last in the series of 7 sessions we've had. And the others have been rooted in the discourses. But actually, this morning's session is not. It's a little bit out of the sequence. I actually took this from an intensive at Nasherwan's House of the Beloved in New Jersey, the 4th. Were you there, Carol? I've forgotten. You were there at that one. And it's on the topic of love. I've actually this year been plunging into topics I was a little bit scared of. One was the discourses themselves, because they're so clear that I wasn't sure what on earth I would have to say except for reading them out. And it turns out that the Baba lovers the Baba community is fully able to come up with their own responses to it. And I was also a little bit apprehensive of talking about the topic of love, because what the heck do you say about it? But one of the things I'd like to do, actually in the course of thinking of how to develop it, it occurred to me, well, why don't we spend some time looking at some of the lyrics of some of the great love songs? So I think for the second half of this session, and it turns out to be quite a bit of fun. At least I think so. Of course, I was a professor of literature. This was my line. But of course, most people are acquainted with this genre also. So we'll start here by talking about some of the basis for the path of love. Here's a description of some of what we're going to be covering. The path of love, which has always commanded the greatest appeal to humanity at large, is based on the realization of God's nature as bliss. I'll be talking more about that. The agony and the ecstasy, the exaltation of union and the despair of separation. These perennial themes of love, endlessly celebrated in our arts and popular culture, express the bliss that is love in its dual aspects as it appears in the world of illusion. That is to say, bliss, as is the nature of God, is unitary, but when it enters into the Mayavic dualistic sphere, that the empirical world that we are in, it shows its two aspects, agony and ecstasy, bliss and pain, those two. Irradiating from within, love illumines life in all its aspects, from the most elevated all the way down to the most mundane and trivial. Love imparts happiness, and when it causes pain, the pain of love is such as to inspire and to impel one onward along the path. Divinizing all of life, love ultimately culminates in the realization of God, who is the goal of life, as infinite bliss itself. So that's our topic this morning. Let me switch to this other slideshow. Why do we suffer? So over here I put an outline of the topics I'll be covering, and here they are here. First we're going to talk about the triune nature of God. Do you know what a triune nature is? A threefold nature. This phrase comes right from God Speaks. The triune nature of God. Do you know what the triune nature of God is, by the way? What three?
Power, knowledge,
Knowledge, power, and bliss, yeah. And this, as best I know, and I'm asking people to correct me who know otherwise, originates with Meher Baba. I'm not sure that this point has been explained before. Knowledge, power, bliss. There's Satchit Anand in Indian civilization, but that actually doesn't mean knowledge, power, bliss. Okay, the metaphysical foundation. Love as the source of union's bliss and separation's agony. Then the agony and the ecstasy in common cultural expression and in high art. This is where we'll look at some song lyrics. And last, just a note to conclude. Love and the divinization of daily life, or the transformation of the happiness-misery dichotomy into divine bliss. By the end of this session, I'm presuming we'll have accomplished that. Anyone who hasn't felt that the seminar is delivered can ask for their money back. So this is, that outline I just read is right here. So now I wanted to begin with talking about the triune nature of God. This appears in Meher Baba's discourses from the 1920s on. It was a constant, it's a really major part of what we could call his philosophy. God's three natures are knowledge, power, and bliss. And it would seem that he really does mean it. It is those three specifically. That's not just a metaphor or a way of thinking about it. Like if someone were to ask me, Ward, well, do you want to add a couple divine natures? I'd say, sure. Peace, that's nice, isn't it? Beauty. How about God's glory? You got any suggestions? You flip some in. Compassion. Mercy. Purity. God is purity. Okay, we've gotten up to 8 already. Well, apparently knowledge, power, and those are certainly significantly associatable with God. I'm sure in the 99 names of God in Islam, mercy is actually the very first. I'm sure you could get all of those. The 101 in Zoroastrianism. It's not to say that they aren't attributes of God. But here is how we actually know that Baba means it, that knowledge, power, and bliss really are the triune nature of God. Because they are the foundation of the three spheres. What are the three spheres in Meher Baba's cosmological account? The three bodies are the gross, right? You guys are, most of you would be acquainted with this, right?
The gross body.
The gross body, yeah. And for my own part, and I'm sure, there'll be, most of you are subtle or mental. Those who aren't, majubs here. And apparently, I take this as true because Meher Baba has said it. We really do have three bodies. It's not just kind of a way of thinking about things. It's actually the case. For example, when your physical body dies, you're actually in your subtle body. And when you progress beyond the fourth plane, like Carol is doing right now, going from the fourth to the fifth, you kind of leave your subtle body. He describes this and how it all happens. And you become aware of your setting your subtle body aside, and you identify yourself with the mental body. In other words, this is empirically true for people who are on those levels. Lois?
Does that explain why she moved into a trailer park?
I'm sure it does.
The address is, okay, the park is called Idle Wheels. The address is 107 Easy Street.
Yeah. That when you go to the fifth plane, you've passed through the dark night of the soul. You're beyond peril of falling.
Passed through my Oklahoma route to the trailer park onto Easy Street.
Because on the fifth plane, you got it made. It's just a matter of time. So, okay, well, here's a word from on high. We got Scott in this case. So, the point is here that the mental sphere, subtle sphere, and gross sphere, here's where Easy Street is in the mental sphere. Mental body, subtle body, and gross body are directly related to the triune nature of God. There's a really good chart in God Speaks this. If we had the time, we'd look at it. I think it's chart 7. It talks about this matter. Thus, the mental sphere is a shadow of knowledge, God's nature as knowledge. The subtle sphere is the shadow of God's nature as power. And the gross sphere is the shadow of God's nature as bliss. Right? In fact, I wish I had this slide. It would take me a minute to find it. It's not worth the time. But Baba says the sphere is the big shadow, and the body is the little shadow. So your mental body is the little shadow, actually, I'll just say, of God's nature as power. It's actually of the Atma. The Atma. And the subtle body is the little shadow of God's nature as power, and the gross body is the little shadow of God's nature as bliss. And through the medium of the little shadow, we look out at the big shadow. Baba explains that too. Through the medium of the body, we look out at the universe. Are you getting this much? Is this? Yeah. Okay. So it's actually a very beautiful, there's a beautiful symmetry in all of this. I don't think this has ever been explained before Meher Baba. I've never seen it anywhere. 3 spheres, 3 bodies that directly mirror and are shadows of the triune nature of God. Now,
You mean by Meher Baba or by other avatars?
I haven't seen it anywhere before Meher Baba. I've seen bits and pieces here and there. I haven't seen knowledge, power, bliss given before. Do any of you know otherwise? Satchitanand, I could talk about that, but Satchitanand does not mean knowledge, power, bliss. Sat is truth, Chit is consciousness, and Anand is bliss. So truth, consciousness, bliss. You are the trinity of truth, knowledge, and bliss. The Gujarati would be Satchitanand there. It's not knowledge, power, bliss. There's no power term there. I really would like it if anybody can, I'm saying this to groups, and if I'm putting my foot in my mouth, I would love it if somebody could correct me of this vice. But so far as I know, Baba is the first to reveal this to humanity. So you see, the whole structure of the cosmos, mental, subtle, and gross, is directly mirroring the triune nature of God Himself. This is, for people interested in Meher Baba's philosophy, this is a big point actually. Now, to try to look at these individually for a moment, to intuitively see if they can make sense. What do you think? Why would the mental sphere be related to knowledge? Yeah.
Knowledge is all that exists in the mind.
Yeah, that's right. Feelings and thoughts. And those are both emanating from the nature of knowledge. The conscious, whatever knowledge is, it's hard to define it. It seems obvious, actually. Mental sphere, the mind, and knowledge. What about the subtle sphere and power?
Energy.
Energy.
All of energy.
Pran. What can you do on the subtle sphere? I know it's hard to remember, Carol, but back when you were on the 4th plane?
One sphere to another,
Yeah, I know. Yeah. Yes, sir? Did you want to say something? What is some of the stuff you can do on the subtle plane? In create worlds. Yeah.
You have the uncontrolled power of God.
Right?
Miracles.
That's right. Miracles, power. So you can raise the dead. You can stop trains. You can make dry wells full of water, or wells empty of water. You can make a dead tree come to life. Power, infinite power is at your disposal on the 4th plane.
But Baba doesn't recommend that, right?
No. No.
So hold on.
Unless you want to go, unless you feel like trying out stone state again.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So, you're talking about 4th plane, but I know that probably on 2nd and 3rd plane, they're also...
Some of the miracles I just mentioned, Baba identifies with the earlier subtle sphere. Yeah. So in how it all happened for that, this is in the book Early Messages to the West. How it all happened reprints the film scenario Baba gave in 1931, originally in 1931. 34. He developed it, and it's a description. It's a film describing that gives a description of passing through the planes. It's one of the most visual and imagistic descriptions of the planes that I've seen. And in it, the whole subtle sphere is described in terms of light, circles of light, or he'll use the phrase, a shattered mass of light. Isn't that a curious expression? A shattered mass of light. So apparently this, what those of us in the gross sphere see here as a room with objects in it, would appear to the eyes of someone on the subtle plane as light in some way. I don't know, swirls of it or dense masses of it, or I mean, we'd have to have someone like Carol describe what she sees, but now she can't see it anymore. She's gone to the fifth plane. So this makes sense. So that the subtle sphere, the subtle body, would be related to power. It intuitively makes sense, right? Now this is the most curious one, bliss and the gross sphere. But I've spent enough time thinking about it where it makes actually great sense to me. But what do you think? Why would the gross sphere be the shadow of bliss specifically? Do you have any thoughts on it? Baba hasn't explained it. He says it, but doesn't really explain.
I'm just improvising.
Bullshitting,
So,
okay.
Yeah, bullshitting.
Yeah.
So what I would imagine
Yeah.
is the gross sphere where you do your spiritual progress and the path of God.
Mm-hmm.
So once you go through that and the path of love,
Right.
it says devotion, you may experience bliss.
The path of love is the path of bliss, and it is directly accessible on the gross plane.
Yeah.
Let's take bliss as a divine nature of God and break it up into two. Let's bring it down to the dual sphere, okay? And use the Hindi expression is sukh dukh, happiness, pleasure. How about that? If you're gonna, don't be spiritual now, be a hedonistic, gross conscious person. What are some examples of pleasure? Food. Sex. Drugs.
Rock and roll.
Don't leave out
Music.
shitting. I mean it. Shitting. As you get to be older, that kind of rises. When you're 20, sex is here and shitting is there, but they sort of.
Frank Zappa said the same thing.
So all of these are directly gross sphere pleasures, are they not? It's almost like, now I'm not saying that there isn't bliss on the higher planes. I'm sure there is. But the most direct emblem of pleasure brings to mind gross things for me. Similarly, the most direct emblem of pain, I mean, I think of, when I know Baba says mental suffering is actually worse than gross suffering, but if I are to talk about the kind of suffering I'm afraid of, it's kind of physical stuff. Like, oh God, I've got cancer, oh, it's agony, or somebody is stabbing me with a knife. So it's like the divine natures of God are present everywhere, from the gross up to the mental, up to God. But the most direct image of it is the gross plane. I'm just trying to rationalize this and intuitively make it make sense. Yeah.
I'm thinking of the dynamics of possession of something. You can have something.
Mm-hmm.
You can have sex. You can have a
Right.
meal. You can have this. You can take it and grasp it.
Yes.
There's a way you can do that that's maybe different than the other spheres.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's true. There is a physical possession. You become it. You assimilate it. Yeah, sir?
Well, like separation and union on a very primitive level, getting down to birds and mammals, mother and babies.
That's right. Yeah. All of that.
Separation is
Yeah.
what's the word?
It does seem to me that the Mayavic dualistic image of the divine union is sex. Sexual union. It mirrors the union of the soul with God, which is, on a physical act. Here's something else about the gross sphere. And this is a little more difficult, and I don't know whether I'll make sense about this or whether this is me just sort of spinning on it, right? Trying to intuitively meditate on this correlation, because I do believe this is a fact. I could give you lots of texts from Baba that the gross sphere, the gross body, are the shadows of bliss specifically. You see, we haven't really gotten to love yet, but we're going to associate love with bliss too. But let me put it this way. Knowledge, in its very nature, has an object, right? That is to say, I know about the Civil War. Well, I know, but there's something that I can see Fred. I know Fred, or I'm conscious of him being there. Knowledge kind of reaches out towards an object, does it not? Now, divine knowledge knows itself. That's beyond, but I'm talking about knowledge in the world of our experience. It has an object. I can know another piece of knowledge, mental sphere. I can know an event, like the Civil War, subtle sphere. I can know a physical object, like I see that computer. Seeing is a form of knowing. Knowing naturally has an object. Okay, power naturally has an object, does it not? Otherwise, what good is it? Like, I'm Babe Ruth, and I hit the baseball out of the park, out of Yankees. I don't think he ever did, but came close. Well, it has an object. It's the baseball, right? I exercise my power on Michael by making him go down to the ocean and dive in. Okay, put a gun, right? So my object is Michael. That's my object. Power naturally seeks an object and expresses itself by producing change in an object, right? Would you agree with that? Does that make sense? How about bliss? There's no object. I'm blissful. Yeah.
It's just
It is.
overflows.
Yeah, now when I'm blissful, I might go out and do blissful stuff. That's true. But I don't bliss something. If I am blissful, that's its own consummation. Bliss in its very nature does not have an object. Thus, the gross sphere is the stopper. The mental sphere projects a subtle sphere. The subtle sphere projects a gross sphere. The gross sphere is, among the three natures of God, bliss is the couch potato. It just sits there and blisses out. When you bliss out, you don't do anything. Matter just sits there unless energy acts on it. This makes sense to me, that just the sheer expression of God's bliss is just inert matter. It will be inert because it doesn't have any reason to do anything.
That's all it has to do is just love.
Yeah. Right. You just sit there and bliss out and there's nothing more to do.
No testing, there's no studying, you just show up.
Yeah. Now when energy acts on it, it does stuff. But if energy doesn't act on it, it simply is. It simply is. Yeah.
Can you give an example of energy acting on bliss and like what would happen?
Well, I'm actually acting on matter. I'm actually taking matter as the externalization of bliss, as the projection of bliss. You see, what I'm trying to just understand is why there isn't another sphere beyond the gross, right? Why there are only three spheres? Because bliss in its very nature is the end. You know, there used to be, back in ancient days when they had computers, they would have these cables and you put one cable and another cable. And at the last one, for certain functions, you had to put a cap on to stop it. I don't know if you remember that. Anyway, I had certain functions where I'd have to put a cap to stop the sequence of cables. It's like the gross is, bliss is the cap. Once you've achieved it, there's nothing more to achieve. And that is true going back up to God too. The one experience everyone has is bliss. Most people don't get knowledge and power. If you get mukti, you only experience bliss. Because once you've got bliss, you don't care. What more is there, you know? Anyway, this is, I'm sure in the future there'll be vast meditations on this. But what I'm trying to explain is why there are only 3 spheres, why there are only 3 bodies. And I think it has to do with the nature of bliss as contrasted with the nature of knowledge and power. Okay, so this is, by the way, this is called a homology, where you have various pairings or trinities of things that are systematically related to each other. This is like a homology. Knowledge, power, and bliss correlated with mental sphere, subtle sphere, gross sphere, mental body, subtle body, gross body. Okay? Now let's take the further step. And this is actually, again, news. Yeah.
So let's take this into the zone of people who've been into Baba a long time. Baba has us veiled, but he starts giving little glimmerings because we're loving him and we're surrendering more every day. So how does that work in terms of
Okay.
bliss?
Okay, let's get to the next tier on this, which will come to us
Oh, okay.
and our path. Because we've been talking so far about the bodies, the spheres, and the divine natures. But just recently, in the course of studying the Tiffin lectures, which will get published next year, we got another connection, which I've never seen it anywhere, except a book by Dr. Deshmukh was the one place which he must have gotten from this. There's a relation between these 3 and the 3 great paths. And these are, in Hinduism, this is a commonplace. Any of you read the Bhagavad Gita? A number of you have, yeah. It's one of the greatest literary works in the history of the world. It's well worth reading. It's only 70, 80 pages or so. But among other things, it's a great treatment of the path of knowledge, the path of action, and the path of devotion. And the names for those are, knowledge is called gyan. Action is karma. You've heard of karma. We think of karma as the bondage that comes from action, but what it actually means is action itself. And bhakti means devotion. And that's actually a little bit of a better word for it. In its purified aspects, you could call it love. In common, at its lower levels, devotion is a better word. Now, let me, I have a little bit. Okay, let's look at this for a second. I think I have this. Oh darn, I didn't put it in here. Shoot. Okay, instead I'll just talk about it. Karma yoga, it's called. Meher Baba's English term for this is selfless service. It's basically a synonym, an English synonym for karma yoga. What do you think karma yoga would be? I'll bet you most of you are karma yogis, whether you think of it that way or not.
Doing good deeds.
Doing good deeds, That's part of it.
Isn't it making choices in the actions that you do on a daily basis?
It certainly involves that.
Choosing one thing, you go, that's not going to take me in a positive place.
Right.
I'm going to choose to do this.
Right. It certainly involves that. Sarah?
Smiling at a stranger for no reason in particular.
Sure. Okay, let me ask this. Okay, I've smiled at a stranger. I've made good choices between actions, and I've done it all day long. I have a 99% batting average of choosing the good action over the bad. I come back at home and I think, what a good boy am I? Am I a karma yogi?
No.
Why not? Yeah.
Attachment to results.
Attachment to results.
There's that line in the Bhagavad Gita, to work thou hast the right, but not to the fruits thereof.
Right. Renouncing the fruits of action. That's what differentiates karma yoga from goodness. Yeah, Chester?
It's like Baba says, do not shirk your responsibility.
It would be karma yoga with the proviso that in discharging my responsibilities, I renounce attachment to the fruit of action. That's the key to karma yoga. That's what keeps it from being bondage. You know, for those of you who went to good and evil discussion last week, Baba said that good creates bondage. Good action creates bondage. Why does it? Because when doing good, if in doing good you're attached to it and attached to the results, you bind yourself in goodness. As surely as you do in badness. It's better bondage. I mean, the results of it are happiness and good things come to you, but you're bound. If you don't want to be bound by goodness, you have to renounce the fruit of action. And
Didn't Baba say that oftentimes you do selfless service without even knowing it?
If you completely forget that you're serving, that's real selfless service. Like that. Yeah.
It's helpful for me to connect the dots between what attachment means and identification of myself.
Yeah.
It's like it's just a way for me to understand that
Yeah.
attachment is kind of like out there, I'm attached, that's theoretical, but the thing is that I become identified with this person who is doing good deeds,
Right.
good actions. So I think that's where the bondage is, right?
That's right. I identify myself.
I'm the doer. I'm doing it.
I am the doer, and the critical element to that is being attached to the action and its result, because the result of an action, if I'm doing an action, it is probably because there is a sanskara that prompts me to it. And a sanskara has at its base a desire, and a desire is for an object. So if I am attached to the object of my desire, I am going to identify myself with it and be bound by it. Lois?
I think that we can so easily fool ourselves. We have to be so careful. I was thinking about something that I did a couple months ago, a good deed, and I would have thought that, hey, I've renounced the attachment to the fruit of it. Because I never told anyone
Right.
what I did to this, but yet I'm
Right.
attached to the fact that I did it.
That's right.
Because
I'm so
I'm thinking about it.
I'm so humble about my goodness that I never tell anyone.
That's how humble I am.
That's how humble I am.
Yeah, so you just
The ego is
trick yourself.
in the discourses on the ego. Baba talks about all these things. How the ego at first will say, "I'm not interested in spirituality," but then when it gets into spirituality, the ego says, "I'm very spiritual." Why would this karma yoga or selfless service be related specifically to power? Because it is, in fact. What's the connection between karma?
It's energy.
Yeah, you're acting. It's action.
Yeah, all action in the universe
It's
is
power.
derived from karma.
Mm-hmm.
Isn't that what Baba said? And
Sure.
so
It's-
that means all the power in the universe that's
Right.
moving, the parts in the universe are
Right.
power and karma kind of intertwined.
You're applying your karma and your energy towards the fulfillment of a purpose. It is action. And power is what makes action possible. It's the negotiation of power. So what karma yoga is the selfless exercise of God's nature as power. Power specifically. That specifically is what relates to karma yoga or selfless service.
How does the desire nature figure into that?
Well, the desire nature is in all of this. And I mean, the desires are actually rooted in the whim of God. And that's what ultimately motivates everything. But when you renounce in karma yoga the fruit of desire, in the very process of expending your desire and expending your karma, you're keeping from getting new karma. That's the method of karma yoga.
But when I'm about to, when I want to do something, I have a sanskars that are coming through, and I'm feeling them, I'm conscious, and I want to do something, but I haven't done it yet. But the desire is like full force. It's right there, but it's not expressed.
Yeah.
And it seems like it's kind of between the.
Yeah.
It's I don't know. It's like a stage of expression. It's like it holds energy.
You know, if we another good topic for one of these seminars is these 3 paths, where we could go into this a lot more, because Baba says a lot of things relevant to this. I'm reluctant to go too much because we won't be able to get to the other things, but it's a big topic. But the method of karma yoga is to act, and thus oftentimes you are putting sanskaras, I'll put it that way, into expression. You often do. Like if I'll go do my job. Well, I probably got my job because I needed money, so there's a desire at the root of that. Or else, whatever my motive might be, there's usually a desire involved in it. And often I will enact desires and thus spend sanskaras. But the method of karma yoga, as distinct from these other yogas, by renouncing the fruit of action inwardly, I spend sanskaras and don't get new ones. As compared with Jnana Yoga, where you don't spend them at all. You don't actually use them. I'll just say a little bit about Jnana Yoga. Infinite intelligence, by the way, is really a place to go on how the different yogas spend sanskaras differently. But the classic case of a Jnana Yogi would be, I don't know if you've read about Milarepa, somebody like that. He's up in a cave for 10 years, eating nettles. That was his diet. Or St. Anthony out in the desert, eating a piece of bread a day for 20 years. Or where you're in total isolation and you're focusing on whatever the object of your meditation is, and any thought or impulse that arises you destroy. That would be the paradigm case of Jnana Yoga. Now, most of us will bring Jnana Yoga to bear on our lives in a perhaps less dramatic way. But I'm giving the paradigm case. You don't allow sanskaras to come up at all. You annihilate them when they first appear. So another way of saying this is neti neti. Do you know the expression neti neti? What is, not this, not that. Whatever emerges into my consciousness that is apart from the object of my meditation or concentration, like if I'm, say, Baba's name, and something else comes up and I push it aside, I destroy it, I don't allow it to take over my consciousness. Yeah?
There was a period of my life in the 70s where I did not read a newspaper, listen to the radio, or watch TV for a period of about 6 months. I felt bliss.
Yeah.
And maybe that's sort of a sense, because everybody be talking about things I wouldn't even know what they're talking about.
Yeah.
All I was concerned about is my own.
That is a kind of a Jnana Yoga practice, in fact. It's discriminative. There's a big intellectual element because you bring the sword of discrimination to bear on everything that appears into consciousness. We're not really talking about this, so I won't say a whole lot. There are beautiful discussions in the discourses on this, especially the deeper aspects of sadhana. If you want to really see a nice, beautiful, short discussion of this, you can turn there. But in its pure form, you don't do anything. You kill your sanskaras by cutting off their heads the moment they appear, not by enacting them. So you see, it's rather different than karma yoga. Okay, enough on that, though. It's a fascinating subject. But the third one is really our topic, Bhakti yoga. And this is rooted in, well, you can see why, Jnana yoga would be related to power. You're exercising discriminative knowledge on all the contents of experiences they arrive. Now, Bhakti yoga, the yoga of devotion, or we could say love from the lowest to the highest, is rooted in God's nature as bliss. And when we bring bliss again down from the transcendental sphere to the dualistic sphere, I would describe it in terms of a pair of dichotomies. Agony and ecstasy. Let's put it that way, in heightened forms, right? Now, isn't that true? I don't know. Sweet 16 and never get kissed. You've never been kissed, and you do your first kiss. Feels pretty good, doesn't it? I mean, love, or else, oh God, she doesn't love me. Oh, she loves me. You know, it's like up a roller coaster from the heights to the depths. That's what love is all about. Love is directly related to bliss. So the path of love is for bliss junkies, actually. But, okay, do you agree?
Yep.
I mean, what I'm saying is there is an innate connection between love and bliss. So when we're talking about the path of bhakti or the path of love, it's the path that leads straight to bliss and has bliss as its motive power. Right? Does that make sense to you all? But now, here's the thing. I'm using the word yoga or marg here as a spiritual practice. In karma yoga, you're working with power selflessly. You're renouncing the selfish goals that you usually achieve through the acquisition of power. So you're not using power for fun. You're using power for God's sake or for others. Okay, Gyan Yoga is similar. You're cultivating discriminative knowledge for the sake of truth. You're not doing it for your own benefit. You're not acquiring discriminative knowledge and then, oh, I can read the minds of others. I'm going to go out into business and read everyone's minds and make a pile of money. That's not Gyan Yoga. It's the selfless use of it. In this case, in the case of bhakti and love, okay, I've got a beloved. Okay, we won't make it a high beloved for the moment. Let's just say I'm in love with this beautiful girl, okay? Bliss is at the center of this. If I'm a real lover, whose bliss am I concerned with?
Beloved.
The beloved's. It's renunciation. It's selfless. I'm concerned with the beloved's happiness, not mine. That's what makes it a yoga. If it's just a path of bliss, I'm just, doing my own bliss thing. I'm in the gross sphere. I'm, eating, everything I want. I'm having sex 20 times a day like a rabbit. And I'm excreting, now that I'm a 63-year-old, 20 times a day. And I'm just wallowing in the gross sphere. But if I'm on the path of a yoga, of a marg, I'm renouncing all of those things for the happiness of my beloved. I sacrifice myself for the sake of my beloved. That's what makes it a yoga. Thus, when Baba says, seek the pleasure of the beloved, put the beloved's pleasure above your own, it's this path, the path of love, where bliss is at its center, but it's not my bliss, it's yours. So this seems to me to really describe the character of the path of love. It is this connection specifically that is at the source and root of it. What do you all think? Does this sound right? Yeah. Here are, I'll just say a little more about them. Yes.
If you think about somebody else who you love to have a bliss, you feel bliss yourself too.
That's right. That's right. You actually experience bliss by renouncing bliss. Baba, there are some wonderful statements of Baba's that I'm just not taking the time to read. But in one of them, Baba talks about these yogas and says the foundation of all of them is renunciation. Renunciation of the self-aim and in this case, putting the bliss of another. And that's the thing. Baba says real happiness lies in making others happy. So the unexpected benefit is you wind up finding happiness yourself, even though that wasn't your aim. Your aim was the happiness of another person. That's the spiritual secret that becomes revealed to one in the course of one's life as you pursue this path. Now, let me see. I'm just going to read a little bit from the Tiffin lectures on these matters. By the way, we just found this. This was up at the Pearsons 2 years ago. All of a sudden, we found the original manuscript for the Tiffin lectures, which we've been working on for 20 years.
What could you say a little bit about what the Tiffin lectures are?
Yeah, they're talks that Meher Baba gave in 1926 and 27 to his Mandali. It's kind of like the spiritual training of his Mandali. And they're in, there are various manuscripts. I could talk about that. I've been working on it for 20 years, actually, and it'll be coming out next year.
Why is it called the Tiffin?
It's on the cover of the most important manuscript, and Tiffin means lunch. And probably this would be the reason for it. Baba, with his Mandali, would go to Kaka Shahane's house. Now, Kaka Shahane was one of his disciples in Ernagown village. I don't know if you know where the dispensary is, not at the edge of Ernagown village. Right at that location was what was called the family quarters. And Kaka Shahane was there. And he would go, and presumably Kaka would give Baba and the Mandali tea and snacks and food. And in those days, that was a big deal. Life at early Meherabad was tough for the men Mandali. So the most identifiable characteristic would be lunch, good food, something better than just the boring drab diet we're having. So that's my guess for why they called it Tiffin lectures. Yeah. So this is from one of them, and we found the original from Phyllis Fred. Actually, it comes from Los Angeles' Phyllis. Adi sent them to her, and when she died, she entrusted them to the Pearsons, and we found Meher Lahar. That's right. That's right. And this chart appeared for the very first time that makes this exact connection we're just talking about, which was previously unknown. That is to say, karma yoga, it's a little hard to read, is the path. This is the gross sphere. This is, he calls it astral. In those days, astral he used to mean subtle, not astral as he later refined it to mean, and mental. Gross, subtle, and mental. The path of karma yoga goes to power. The path of bhakti yoga goes to bliss. And the path of gyan yoga, gyan marga, I'm sorry, he's calling it marga. Marga means path, like tariqat, spiritual path. Gyan yoga goes to knowledge. This is where this connection was really explained. And he has little discussions of that. I'll just read bits of it. He who adopts the bhakti marg, or path of devotion, enters into the astral plane, means subtle plane, is rewarded by occasional glimpses of that eternal joy through whose rays he travels. Nonetheless, the final goal remains a long way off. The seeker has yet to cross this astral plane before reaching the mental. And once the mental plane is attained, though he enjoys joy directly, he is not yet one with it. More often than not, the seeker remains in that blissful state for a long time. He enjoys bliss, anand, the bliss anand aspect of the highest, but has not yet become bliss himself. He remains a mere bhakt. Okay, so bhakti yoga is connected with bliss. That's making it quite explicit here. Here's karma yoga. He who advances by the karma marg, karma path, proceeds along the same basic lines as delineated above, with one difference. On the astral plane, subtle plane, he gleans occasional glimpses. Or somebody was mentioning glimpses. Yeah, Debbie was. of the eternal power of the highest state, not eternal bliss, as in the case of the Bhakt. The people of this plane generally comprise the great leaders of nations, to which they have rendered great service. Seva, isn't that interesting? Yeah. If you want to become president, next lifetime, become a karma yogi this lifetime. I imagine somebody like Mahatma Gandhi had been a great karma yogi for a long time and thus acquired the merit. When these same karma yogis reach the mental plane, they become Mahatmas who achieve great wonders through powers they have acquired on the planes. So this is karma yoga, working selflessly with power through the medium of selfless action. And then Gyan yoga, the third of these. Gyan means knowledge. By the way, our word knowledge, you may notice, is spelled with a K-N. That's because it used to be said knauen. Gyan, they're related. Germanic is related to Sanskrit, if you go back to Indo-European. So that's why you can see our word knowledge in that. The person's Gyan Marg passes through the same stages as those in Bhakti and Karma Margs do, except that he experiences the knowledge aspects of eternal existence. When these Gyan Yogis, as they are called, reach the astral plane, they win glimpses of eternal knowledge. And as they advance further into the mental plane, through their Gyan or knowledge acquired in the planes, they see the face of God. That is, they experience sakshatkar, God's immediate sight and presence. Earlier, while in the astral plane, they heard sweet melodies, smelt subtle fragrances, and saw beautiful sights invisible to the ordinary senses. So this is an explicit discussion of the three great paths and their connection to the triune nature of God. This is really an important part of Meher Baba's philosophy, or I'm calling it darshana these days. This homology, knowledge, power, bliss, mental, subtle, gross, the path of knowledge or Gyan Marg, the path of power or Karma Marg, and the path of bliss or Bhakti Yoga, Bhakti Marg. Okay? So this is all giving a metaphysical foundation to the whole path of love here. Now, let's... There's a lot more I could say about this, but let's move on. This is one of the greatest messages of all times. Of course, every time I read a new message of Baba, I put it in that category. But since this one is on screen at the moment, let me say that. This, you recognize this one? This is, Everything in the Nothing. It's the first message there. And what this message does, really speaking, is it gives the divine theme of God Speaks and tells it in the language of love. It makes it into a love story. You may notice, those of you who have read God Speaks, and probably most of you have, that it hardly talks about love at all. The word virtually never comes up. This is God Speaks made into a love story, or in terms of the love theme. Do we have a reader here? Can somebody read it out? Anyone?
God is love, and love must love. And to love, there must be a beloved. But since God is existence infinite and eternal, there is no one for him to love but himself. And in order to love himself, he must imagine himself as the beloved whom he as the lover imagines he loves. Beloved and lover imply separation, and separation creates longing, and longing causes search. And the wider and the more intense the search, the greater the separation, and the more terrible the longing. When longing is most intense, separation is complete, and the purpose of separation which was that love might experience itself as lover and beloved, is fulfilled, and union follows. And when union is attained, the lover knows that he himself was all along the beloved whom he loved and desired union with, and that all the impossible situations that he overcame were obstacles which he himself had placed in the path to himself. To attain union is so impossibly difficult because it is impossible to become what you already are. Union is nothing other than knowledge of oneself as the only one.
Fantastic
Very
message.
beautiful.
Magnificent message.
Nothing like it.
We've been talking about the connection between love and bliss, which in its two aspects is agony and ecstasy. Do you see any of that here? Where? Separation. Separation, longing. The wider and the greater the separation and the more terrible the longing. Right. This is all about the agony of separation and the bliss of union. This love, when you're on the path of love, you're in for it. You're in for it. Pain becomes worse, and fulfillments become worse. That's the road we're on, if we're on the love path. But here's another important thing about this pain, and that has to do, we're going to be coming to some of these love songs where we see these themes come up. But the pain of love, as compared with ordinary worldly pain, is transformative. It's transformative pain. And it's uplifting pain, too. And that's a lot of what, let's look about the three spheres of love. This is from the Discourse on Love. Love on the gross sphere, I didn't put it here for time reasons, but love on the gross sphere is lust. Okay, so like, rabbits are famous for their love lives, right? They run around and copulate all day long. At least that's their reputation. I'm actually not a, whatever branch of science that would be, but animal love is that. Okay, or else I'm a tiger and I'm in love with the deer in such fashion that I eat it, right? That's love. That's gross love on that sphere. But when you get to the subtle sphere, could somebody read this out? This is love on the subtle sphere.
The lover in the subtle sphere is not free from lust, but the lust which he experiences is not undiluted as in the gross sphere. What is that? Not undiluted. So
yes.
The intensity of lust in the subtle sphere is about half that in the gross sphere.
Thus it is diluted. It's 50% dose.
Besides, there is no gross expression of lust as in the gross sphere. The lover in the gross sphere is inextricably entangled with the gross objects. Hence, his lust finds gross expression. But the lover in the subtle sphere has gotten free from attachment to gross objects. Hence, in his case, lust remains unexpressed in the gross form. His lust has subtle expressions, but it cannot have gross expressions. Besides, since about half of the original lust of the gross sphere gets sublimated in the subtle sphere, the lower in the subtle sphere, the lover in the subtle sphere experiences love, not as undiluted lust, but in a higher form as longing to be united with the beloved.
Isn't that interesting? Longing is lust transformed, lust uplifted. Erich used to talk about this sometimes. The word longing, it's like stretched out or delayed gratification, so to speak, where you experience the denial and that And there's a certain acceptance of the denial, and thus the feeling of longing arises. Longing means a distance. I don't know if that's making sense. Eric used to talk about that
So it's
sometimes.
kind of like waiting in line at a roller coaster.
Yeah, that's right. Instead of just jumping right in, there's a it gets sublimated away. You have to let go of it, but you still have the desire for it, but you sort of have the anguish of not having it. And there is a certain pleasure in the anguish. That's what I gather people on the subtle plane experience, as Carol could have told us, but she's forgotten, having left that. Yeah. Now here we get to, now here we have more on love is longing. Oh, Baba, you like me better than you like Ray. Surely. You're mine more than his. There is a selfish element in there, but there really is a love for the beloved. Yeah.
Longing is a less limited form of love than lust. In longing, the curtain of duality has become more transparent and less
Obstructive.
Since the lover now consciously seeks to overcome duality between the lover and the beloved by securing the presence of the beloved. In lust, the emphasis is solely on the limited self, and the beloved is completely subsidiary to the gross needs of the self. In longing, the emphasis is equally distributed on the self and on the beloved. And the lover realizes that he exists for the beloved just in the same way as the beloved exists for him.
I mean, isn't this cool? That's why Baba working with his lovers, you can see, when I look at these stories, there's love there. The lovers actually love the beloved, but they're wanting their own percentage. They want their own cut. And Baba is gradually taking away their percentage. It goes from down and down and down and down. He's purifying love because it's this kind of love. Love is longing. Now we get to love in the mental sphere. You want to take us to the end, Michael?
The lover in the mental sphere has an even higher and freer expression of love. In his case, though lust has not completely disappeared, it is mostly sublimated. Only about 1/4 of the original lust of the gross sphere remains, but it remains in a latent form without any expression. In the mental sphere, lust does not have even subtle expression. The lover of the mental sphere is detached from subtle objects, and he is free from possessive longing for the beloved, which is characteristic of the lover in the subtle sphere. In the mental sphere, love expresses itself as complete resignation to the will of the beloved. All selfish desire, including longing for the presence of the beloved, has disappeared.
Now look at that one. Even longing for the presence of the beloved. You even let go of that.
Now the emphasis is solely on the worth and will of the beloved. Selfishness is utterly wiped out, and there is a far more abundant love in a pure form. However, even in the mental sphere, love has not become infinite. Since there is still present the thin curtain of duality which separates the lover from the beloved, love is no longer in the clutches of selfishness, but it is still short of being infinite because it is experienced through the medium of the finite mind. Just as in the lower spheres, it is experienced through the medium of the lower bodies.
Okay, so here we see the progressive uplifting and purification of love from its lowest forms in animality up to the place where you actually see God face to face, which is the culmination of the mental sphere. Now, Baba is talking as God, human form, describing love. But I notice that these themes really come up even in popular culture all over the place. because they have immense appeal to people, even though people don't typically think about it in those forms. Like, let's take a great love story. I don't know if anybody, do you guys read Romeo and Juliet anymore, as Shakespeare receded, but stories like that. Okay, Romeo and Juliet meet and they're totally in love. Okay, what do you think the audience would be? Romeo and Juliet meet, they fall in love, they kiss, they fall into each other's arms, and the story ends. Boring. Boring. On the other hand, wouldn't that be kind of the nicer story to go through instead of what they did go through, which is they're separated by their families, they go through desperation, they both killed themselves in the end. Or let's take Majnun and Layla. You may not know that story, but actually Majnun got realized. Well, Majnun and Layla fall in love, their families separate them, they spend their whole lives apart and never get together at all. Layla is forced to marry another man, as in fact. And Majnun goes out in the desert, is hopeless. He just lives with animals, you know, and all these beasts accumulate around him, and he's, anyway, there are wonderful stories about it. And they never get together at all. Would that be fun? It would not be. Yet,
Maybe that's what it got realized.
it is. It is.
Majnun.
The story is that a master, a perfect God-realized soul, this is from Baba, it's not from the traditional account, but a perfect master came across Majnun and was deeply touched by Majnun's love. And the master said, you know, if you loved God as you love Layla, you would get God. And Majnun said, I don't care about God, I only care about Layla. And the master was so touched that he gave him realization of God.
That's what happened.
Real love. Yeah.
Officer, master.
He too was, he had a master. And as I remember, he at one point said, I've been with you for 40 years and you haven't even given me God, or you haven't given me this girl I wanted. What good are you? Like that. So why is it? It's not just spiritual aspirants. Why is it that popular culture loves stories like this? You know, it's not when people have to go through suffering, because in our hearts we're longing for real love. And in these love stories, lower love gets transformed.
Yeah.
You have to, you get separated, you get denied, you go through danger, you go through opposition, you have to exhibit all these higher qualities. I mean, I know there's every kind of crappy love story too, but the ones that really have enduring appeal are like this. They show great sacrifice and great upliftment, because innate to the love story is transformation of the lower to the higher. What we just read about here, where, you know, you give up things, you sacrifice, endure physical hardship, you give up your life. Yeah.
Well, I mean, I often think about this, you know, like when it comes up. You know, we did Lady Majnun, Baba talks about it. There would have been an incident where Lady goes to forest and, you know, falls and is a little bit, injury, and then Majnun gets blood on his feet.
Yes.
It was that connection.
When they're not physically together at all.
Somewhere else, but when she had pain, Majnun feels it instead. You know, stuff like that. But in that, Baba said that's an element of selfishness.
Mm-hmm.
It's not the purified love.
Yeah.
But my question is that, is this almost a necessary element? Because we see that through the story and, you know, many mystical stuff. And is this like the intense human love?
Yeah.
Is it like a necessarily element for that higher love?
Well, that's where we're coming from.
Yeah.
So if we are going to find God, naturally it's our human love that God is working with. What else is he supposed to work with?
Yeah.
Unless you're already there.
Yes.
In which case there's no need for it. But, you know, most people are beginning from the gross plane where there are all kinds of desires. Baba, you see in his life how he would work with people with the love that they had. and would gradually transform it into something higher. But one thing to be said here is it's not just that he wants it, we want it too. And that's what the popularity of these love themes shows. Everybody wants it. We might not want to pay the price.
Yeah, they could have written Romeo and Juliet all nice like that, but nobody would have liked it.
Nobody would have liked
They
it.
want to stretch out, they want to make the characters suffer.
Right.
And yet we turn to God and go, why don't you help me out?
That's right.
What's this longing I'm feeling? Why don't you give me, what you got right
I know. We create, I know. That's right.
Pain is good.
Yeah.
Really.
And in the middle of, this terrible love stories where the lovers are separated, they, complain, oh God, why do you treat me this way? But it's actually the thing that makes it beautiful, the thing that brings out the nobility of the human character. We all really want it. We actually do, and that's why these forms are among the most popular. So I actually wanted to look at some love songs, because first we'll start some regular old worldly ones. Nice. This is a nice song. And let me start here. I want to bring out how, I don't think that probably Paul McCartney was thinking about the sixth plane of consciousness when he wrote it, or love for God, or anything else like that. But whether the people do or not, real love songs have a way of touching in on these eternal themes. Now, with a couple of these songs here, I'd like to start by looking at the question of an implied narrative. In fact, I'm going to write it on here. That is, often love songs will have an implied storyline. And the thing is, because we're familiar with this kind of thing, it doesn't take much to alert us to it. But okay, yesterday all my troubles seemed so far away. Now it looks as though they're here to stay. Oh, I believe in yesterday. Okay, we don't yet have any indication of love, now do we? Although an acute, well-attuned listener to the radio would probably guess that we're not going to have to wait very long. But what do we have? What have we been told so far in our storyline?
Life was good before.
Yeah.
And some things happened and now it's not.
Now it's not. Yesterday is the past. There's a contrast between the past and the present. And also, he says, I believe in yesterday. What does he mean?
I liked it.
He wants to live. Things were good.
I want it back. I long for it. Longing, it's actually. This is another, if we had more time, I'd pull up a part of the supplement to God Speaks, believe it or not, where he talks about forgetfulness and remembrance. That's a big theme here. Remembrance. I'm remembering something from the past. And remembrance, isn't it funny? Remember Baba, Baba, Baba. Remember. The word remember implies past, doesn't it? There's something in the nature of love that looks to the past and wants to bring it into the present. A lot of these love songs have that, and this one it's starkly at the center of it. Okay. Suddenly, I'm not half the man I used to be. There's a shadow hanging over me. Oh, yesterday came suddenly. What else? What has been added to our story?
The change happened.
Right. I wasn't expecting it. And now yesterday becomes not just the idyllic state of yesterday, but when something happened that changed it away from that. Now here's another thing about these love songs. Usually when you're presenting yourself, it's almost universal. When you're presenting yourself to the world, okay, let's put it this way. I'm here in this group, and there's been a big conflict between me and Fred. We had a big fight, okay? So, I'm going to tell what happened between me and Fred. Isn't the likelihood that I'm going to tell the story where I come out sounding right? Isn't that normal? That is to say, and Fred looks pretty bad. Or if I'm being more spiritual, I'll say, well, I understand Fred's point of view, but the subtext is he's wrong. He's a nice guy, but he's wrong because I'm right. That's normal. When you present yourself to others in the normal worldly modality, you present yourself as bright, positive, strong, successful. Usually you present yourself as happy. Sometimes you'll do otherwise if you want their sympathy. But what you don't say is, I'm a loser. Because if you say I'm a loser, you tend to lose the respect. So there are certain circumstances where we would do that, right? But not normally. Because the usual worldly experience is when you present yourself as a loser, people run away from you. And when you present yourself as a winner, people are drawn to you. Wouldn't you say that's generally true? Yeah. But how about these love songs? A consistent theme is, I'm a loser. I've been rejected. My beloved has rejected me. That's not the normal worldly way now, is it? But isn't it true of love songs? Not always, but very, very often. I am a loser. And there is a spiritual root in this, I feel. It's an innate spiritual root. My ego is being crushed. Love crushes my ego. And in a love song, you say it. Somehow, a love song is you're being intimate. You know, he may have sold 100 million copies of this song. But nonetheless, that genre allows you to express intimately to your audience, which is why people like it. And actually, the deeper part of me wants my ego to be crushed. That's why we like love songs. Don't you think that's true? Yeah. It seems obvious. Yeah, Sarah?
Yeah, I think you see, it's been diminished.
Right.
And when he says, I'm not half the man I used to be. So
right. Right. There's less of me there.
He's lost
right.
half of himself.
Right. So Erich says to Fred, am I a man or I'm a mouse? Well, he's on the road to being a mouse. Why would he tell him that? He's half the man. I love that story. Yeah. And he's confessing to having been cut down as a man. You don't normally do that in the world. But in love songs, when you hear it, it's like, it seems so sweet. And here he is, the great Paul McCartney, superstar, Beatle. And yet he's, this is what appeals to people. Okay, we still haven't gotten what the story is. But now we do. Why she had to go, I don't know. She wouldn't say. I said something wrong. Now I long for yesterday. What new? I'm talking about implied narrative here. Because we actually all have the skills when listening to songs to work out an implied narrative. We know the genre, for one thing. And a lot of these things are quite predictable. And so a lot of it is how skillfully the lyricist taps into these things. What has been added to our... Huh? And also, we knew in the past, in the first two verses, we know that he's had a misfortune. What kind of misfortune?
A loss of a lover.
That's right. The loss of a lover. We weren't told that before, although we might have guessed it, having heard about 1 billion songs like this before. But now it's the she. We don't know her name, but it's a beloved. And as you say, it's my fault. Now, in my fight with Fred, did I say it was my fault? I did not. How often do people say, sometimes in the Baba world, we'll try to do that, out of a sincere effort to serve Baba. But it's not the way of the world at all. Not at all. But it is the way of love. I mean, does he say, that bitch?
He may, but he's not here.
That was in the earlier draft. No.
Said that once.
Did he?
Shut up, that bitch.
Yeah, that's right. There are some songs like that, but the most popular ones are not. They're not.
Yeah.
And I said something. He's not saying I said something that was pretty good, but she didn't understand it. No, I was wrong. There's no excuse for him, and now he longs. It's just pure. I made a mistake. Repentance, huh? Tauba. You know tauba? You probably don't know the word tauba in Islam. Repentance. It's actually.
Tawbeh.
Huh?
Tawbeh.
Taubeh? Okay.
Tawbeh, yes.
Okay. Repentance. It's actually a spiritual theme. And it's part of love. Where, what do you repent? Okay, let's go back to the discourse. But I'm being starkly metaphysical. Love on the gross plane is lust. You repent of it, and it becomes longing, where you long for the beloved and want him to be there. You repent of longing, and you acquire resignation. And finally, I don't know, maybe you repent of resignation and become God. I don't know. You turn away from the lower and come to the higher. This is actually a spiritual theme. And I think McCartney expressed it in a way that really does capture that spiritual feeling, although I doubt that was his conscious thought when he was writing it. So a repentance, I said something wrong and I'm longing. This theme of remembrance, longing, to remember God is a central theme of all the great religions. Zikr in Sufism.
Yeah.
You know, Allah, Allah, Baba, Baba, Ram, 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 Krishna, Krishna, like all of this. Remember, as though God belongs to the past and I'm trying to bring God to the present. And actually, God does belong to my past because before the whim of God, I was God.
Oh. Can we say that? Can we call you on that?
It's true. It's true. It's true, isn't it? And I actually think that's the root of remembrance. That we were God once. Our deepest intuition, we know it. Okay, now the last. Yesterday, love was such an easy game to play. Maybe the greatest statement of this of all times, I wish I had a couplet of Hafez, where he said, this translates like this. Oh, I don't know if he says Saki, pass the jug around and give us all wine. Love seemed at first an easy thing, and now difficulties arise. I love it. It's the first couplet in the first ghazal in Hafez's Divine.
It's one of the most beautiful ghazal.
Yeah,
It's
yeah.
a statement and
Yeah,
it
yeah.
goes on with
Love seemed at first an easy thing, and now difficulties arise. Yeah.
So this love that you have, I mean, relating to like this song,
Yeah.
you love that person, something caused you to break up. Now, do you still love that person forever, even though they're going their separate ways? You still love them. It's almost like that story of the washer guy who did work for a princess. Remember that in the castle? He cleaned her clothes and pressed them so nice. He loved her, but he was a peasant. And then she finally was amazed at why are these clothes coming this way. Then apparently something happened to him, and then she wanted to know why. But anyway, the point of it is, you can love somebody without them even
knowing it.
Reciprocate.
Right.
I mean, is that the story here? I mean, or is he still hooked to the? Or is this directly to the lover, to the beloved? You're not relating to this unconditional love for someone.
What is the picture of the future in this song? He's longing.
It's not very cheerful.
There doesn't seem to be any prospect at all.
It's difficult for him.
There's no hope at all. It's just pure longing. And I suppose if you take it the next step, you say there's no prospects in this longing. You need to be resigned.
Yeah.
Which is mental plane, right?
Yes.
That's where it would lead, would it not?
Yes.
Because there isn't any hope in the future. There isn't any thought, oh, love was such an easy game to play. But since she dumped me, I'm going to go out and find someone else. That would ruin it, wouldn't it?
Yeah.
Why would it ruin it? Because it would ruin the feeling of a pure love, which is what we want to get from the song. Whereas, and in the world, we'd say, well, she dumped me, but there are 20 other chicks who are much prettier than her. I'm going to go get someone better. I mean, that would be unworthy of such a song, and we all know it. Somehow, even though in the world, that's what most of us would show. It's sort of like, you know, I'm real cool. She missed her chance. You know, I'm going to do much better. But in the love theme, you don't. You accept it, and you go through the fire, and you accept the annihilation of that little bit of egoism. That's why these songs are popular, because in our hearts we know that this is the path of love that we want to go on.
We relate to it.
Now, how about this? I need a place to hide away. Hide away from who or what?
Himself.
Himself, sure.
Feeling.
And also, yeah, and it would also be from others, would it not?
Oh, yeah.
You know, and this is another theme of love. You hide your love, don't you? Secrecy. Even though you write it in a song and sell 100 million copies, this is kind of the irony of the genre. But there is a quality of love of hiding.
Isn't there a lyric, you've got to hide your love away?
Yeah.
Uh-huh. This is a great theme of love songs all over the place. I don't know if, I won't take the time to do it now, but heartache follows me. The first two lines, sometimes they ask me if I'm really happy now. I say, sure, I never loved her anyhow. Same thing, isn't it? I'm hiding. I suffered a rejection. I'm suffering from love, and I hide it from the world. But then in the next two lines we find out, but inside I long for you in the way it used to be. Same theme. I look around and there's a heartache following me. But I don't tell. They ask me and I hide it. This is a great theme of love songs, too.
You know, Ward, I'm still caught up in what you revealed in the morning. I mean, like this, not in the morning, which I really didn't know. And you talked about, Eric said it, and that is that the longing is the expanded version of love.
Yeah.
I had no idea.
Drawn out.
Drawn out.
I mean, like, love is such an easy game to play. Okay, I mean, in the world nowadays, you know, you have sex and all this kind of thing. But in this song, you don't. In fact, it doesn't come up. Somehow, in a real love song, that level of love is not worthy of mention even, you know, even though most people have those desires. But it's not, somehow we know that it doesn't belong in the higher love. Because we actually know we need to rise above that to pure love. Everyone really knows this, actually, you know. So this needed to hide, and then the final note is this longing for yesterday. It's a very beautiful song, and the melody is really gorgeous.
Yeah.
McCartney had a real knack for these wonderful melodies. Let's look at one of the greatest love songs of all times. This really is good. It's really a masterpiece. It's I could spend actually my professor when I was getting my PhD was one of the world's great scholars on metrics. So I always notice the metrics. But I won't talk about that. But just notice the skill of the rhyming. I do want to say that. Begin the begin, evergreen. Sound of music so tender, night of tropical splendor. We have internal rhyming. I'm with you once more, under the stars and down by the shore. An orchestra's playing, and even the palms seem to be swaying. Anyway, it's very skillful rhyming. He was really quite a master. We don't really get people that good very often, actually. But, okay, let's, again, this thing of an implied narrative. This is central to the method of this song, too. What is begin the begin?
It was a dance. dance, wasn't it?
It was a dance, yeah. And
It was also what, a convent or something?
Yeah, it was nuns.
there was an order of Beguines back in the 14th, 15th century. It was a kind of a mystical movement in Europe that happened. Now, this was released in the 1930s. And do you happen to know about Cole Park? He was like real rich. And that world was well known through movies and that kind of thing. So it's kind of, I don't actually know what the Beguine as a dance is. Do any of you happen to know? I have the idea it's kind of among people who are cultivated in dance. I mean, maybe not ballet dance, but, you know.
Like court dance or something?
Or, you know, if you'd have a certain education to know what the Beguine is as a dance. I don't know, it's sort of the richer set or something like that. It's kind of that world that we're in. And I think a lot of the audience would have known that right off the bat. Okay, but it brings back the sound of music so tender. It brings back a night of tropical splendor. It brings back a memory evergreen. Okay, we don't yet have an explicit enunciation of love, but it's not that hard to guess. What are some of the elements we've got? Tenderness is there.
Splendor.
But even very literally speaking, have we got a scene?
Oh, yeah.
What?
I don't know, this lush, tropical,
Right.
warm, wonderful
Right.
evening and the music floating through and
Right.
it's just,
You got a total scene there. So once again, you get the idea of like a world cruise. You know, most people are not in America then wouldn't be having nights of tropical splendor, but it might be their idea of an idyllic vacation. You take a cruise and go out to Tahiti, and a night of tropical splendor. Where's the music probably coming from? As an orchestra.
One of those dance bands from the 30s.
Right, as a dance band.
It would play at hotels and clubs. Like
Yeah.
Nelson.
You're in a hotel down by the ocean in, I don't know, Tahiti, or I don't know what places, Hawaii, like that. The music's playing. Okay. What about a memory evergreen? Why green?
It's always fresh in his mind.
That's right. It hasn't died. The memory is always alive in me. So, remembrance. We've got something in the past. So now, I'm in a club or something, and they start playing the Beguine. I guess it's a certain kind of dance form. I don't know it. A certain kind of rhythm. It brings back all these memories. Remembrance, right? Yesterday. The theme of remembrance is sounded right at the beginning. Okay, now we do get the love. I'm with you once more under the stars, and now we get explicit. And down by the shore, where are we?
By the ocean.
By the ocean, yeah. And we've got an orchestra. We heard before it was night. What kind of weather have we got tonight?
Balmy.
Clear skies, balmy, the stars are out. This is relevant, by the way. He uses this metaphor later on. Okay.
Why does he say tropical splendor?
Why? What do you think?
Well, I mean, I'm asking.
well, it's
What does
tropical.
everybody?
And it's
Tropic?
wonderful. I mean, it's just,
What?
it's heaven on earth.
It's warm.
Yeah. Like
It's not like
Is it tropical?
it's not like a lovely winter up in Maine,
Yeah.
where you've got your darn jacket on. The stars are out there, but man, the wind, the trees are swaying because the wind is freezing you to death.
Frozen.
Yeah.
The tropics, you're more relaxed, you're
Open.
transported.
Yeah.
Generally, the world doesn't live in a tropical zone.
Mm-hmm.
They live somewhere else, and you go to the tropics to
Yes,
to relax and escape.
that's right.
Escape, yeah.
Yeah, it's an escape from your ordinary life, especially in those days. You know, where people didn't live there. The sort of people listening to the song weren't living in places like, some would in Florida, but most were not. Would be in New York or something like that.
Yeah, and even the music is different than we used to.
That's right. Yep. Music is big here, is it not? And I wouldn't ordinarily be prepared to go this far with a song, but I am with this song because it is so primordial. I don't think Cole Porter was consciously thinking this way, but through his one of the great inspirations of all time. Do you know the phrase the Brahmanad? The Brahmanad. It's we could call it the word with a capital W. Brahmanad means word, and Brahma, the word of God, the primordial vibration that gives rise to the entire creation.
They say that about 7 names of God, I heard.
Baba talked about the Brahmanad. There's a message from him in Stay with God from Baba himself, about a whole page. He talks about the primordial vibration that gives rise to the entire creation. This song the lyric is so fine that when he talks about beginning the begin, it makes me think of that basic vibration that gives rise to this whole life. I'm not saying he thought that or was thinking about that, but I do think the feeling is there. It gives that feeling because when the music starts, it's almost like when the creation starts, love starts. So, and here the palms are swaying. Why are they swaying? Or they seem to be swaying.
There's a breeze.
There's a breeze,
And a wind.
It's almost like they're dancing too, along with the dancers at the beginning.
The wind, there's a sympathetic movement. Even the nature seems to be responding to nature itself. The outer environment is sympathy. It's so powerful that everything is involved in it. The love we experience, I'm with you. Now there's a you in it. There's me and you, the new element. And the whole universe is in harmony with it. It's not just us. So with the environment, the stars are out. It's a night of tropical splendor. The palms are swaying. The ocean is there. The orchestra, the people in the orchestra, they might be sort of bitching at each other privately, You're such a showboat. Why are you playing? You played off tune. But no, that doesn't come up here. It's in total harmony with the whole scene. Everything is at one. There's a state of primordial harmony and unity. Okay, so far, this is like yesterday. Sounding pretty good so far.
Yeah.
We're in for trouble, huh? Okay, now this line, Cole Porter was really good. By the way, the rhyming, endeavor, forever, heart, part. He's changed the rhyming scheme here because the melody has changed too. He was quite a master of melodies. To live it all again is past all endeavor. What does that mean?
It's not possible.
What isn't possible?
To recapture it.
I couldn't go through that again. Doesn't it sound like that? Or to recapture it is something I couldn't do. But there's also a little bit of a feeling, and it comes up later in the song, oh God, I couldn't go through all of that again.
Is it nostalgia you feel?
Well, a nostalgia, but why wouldn't I want to go through it again? It's pretty good, isn't it? So it's implying something else about this. That there must have been an agony associated with this ecstasy. Good to see Ed. To live it again, but we haven't learned yet what this is about. There's a hint of some kind of an agony that's in this whole picture. I couldn't do it again, except when? When that tune clutches my heart. When they begin the begin, right? Now it's a tune clutching my heart, right? And remember, it's a memory evergreen. So now we're getting further associations with that. When they begin the begin, a tune clutches my heart and brings all this up again. And when it does, it's like, oh God, I couldn't do that again. So don't let them begin the begin, right? That theme is recaptured there. But when it does, now what do we get that's new in the story? And there we are, swearing to love forever and promising never, never to part.
They're
they're dancing, they probably got their arms around each other, and they're saying, you know, we'll never part. This love will last forever. Immortal, eternal love. New element added to the story. We might have guessed it. I was with you under the stars. But now it's an eternal love that will extend into the future. The future has come into the picture. It's a promise that this will last forever. Yeah, boy, he's really good.
Question.
Yeah.
Why do you think Baba liked this song? I mean, I'd like to know your personal opinion. This song so much and said to play it 7 times.
Well, probably because it was a third-rate song and he was really... I mean, I think we're seeing it, aren't we?
Yeah. Now, I'm curious to know what did Baba think of it.
Let's keep going. Let's keep going. Because we're exploring, this is an exploration. I actually can't think of a love song of the last 100 years that's better than this. I really can't. Yeah. Okay. There we are, swearing to love forever and promising never, never to part. You know, I've written, 500 songs. And one thing I have found is that saying the simple things can be the most powerful. And this is, okay, I guess maybe conventional wisdom would, you don't say something so it's cliched as that. But you know, people don't actually feel that way. They actually want to hear these things. They actually want to say these things. We're loved forever and we'll never part. Well, what's the divorce rate now? You know, 50% chance we'll get broken up. But when the love arises, you want the eternal. And this rises beyond the level of that world where 50% of marriages break and end in divorce, up to something in the eternal realm. And that's what people actually want. Okay, now, what moments divine, what raptures serene, till clouds came along to disperse the joys we had tasted. And now, when here, people curse the chance that was wasted. I know but too well what they mean. What has been added to our story that we didn't have before? There was a hint. How did we miss it? What happened?
We let it go by.
Yeah.
We let his Dhamma slip by.
Whatever, we must have lost it. That is to say, we were under the stars, but we're probably not now, are we?
No.
Probably it got broken up.
Yes.
Isn't that implied? He doesn't exactly say it, but it's pretty clear. Now, what was the weather like before?
Tropical is
And the stars were out. So, this is ridiculous, but on the literal level, they were out there dancing, and then clouds came and began to rain, and the dance got spoiled. Okay, obviously, he's talking about more than that, but he's giving consistent metaphors here. Earlier, the metaphor was starry night, and then clouds came and ruined it. But obviously, he's talking about something more in our story. Something happened where it got destroyed. The love, we were promising never, never to part, but it didn't work out that way. We must have lost it because the clouds came along. And what sort of thing would a clouds be? Well, had a fight. Maybe, she got attracted to some other guy, or I got attracted to some other girl, or why she had to go, I don't know. She wouldn't say I said something wrong, something like that. Cole Porter isn't at all explicit about this, but you sort of know something happened and it got destroyed. Yeah.
When I use the word wasted, doesn't it imply that it's his fault?
It does. It was a wasted chance. Now, it's not altogether clear in this case whether I was wrong or whether my beloved was wrong. That issue is not enunciated. But I certainly feel regret and I feel repentant because I wasted a chance. Now when I hear people curse the chance what was wasted, I know but too well what they mean. That is to say, I did it. I did it too. Repentance. Tawbi, you're saying. Tawba is the Arabic?
Tawbah, yeah.
taube,
Yes.
repentance, a sense there's an Edenic state of primordial bliss that I lost. I mean, it's so beautifully expressed. Okay.
There's a question here from Ken.
Yeah.
No, I just was going to jump ahead just because I see you coming to it, and I think that the payoff is here in the next stanza.
Mm-hmm.
To me, what it's really the song's about is the death of desire. And that line, "Let it sleep like the dead desire, I only remember," I think to me that's the payoff. Really what we're talking about is the death of desire.
Why don't you read the stanza out for us?
So don't let them begin to begin. Let the love that was once a fire remain an ember. Let it sleep like the dead desire. I only remember when they begin.
Now here, remember, to live it again is past all endeavor, right? Now we have an articulation of it. What is he saying here? Don't let them, hey band, hey, don't do that number. Why not?
Because I don't want to go through the agony.
I can't go through the agony of that again. To live it again is past all endeavor. I can't endure that.
Yeah.
When that love comes up, it's so blissful, and I kind of know, it's sort of like I'd almost rather stay in my lethargic, dead, dull, I mean, I experienced this. I don't want to get stirred up. I can't go through that tumultuousness that happens all the time. So love was fire, but I want it just to stay as a little ember. Notice, I'm not saying I let the love that was once a fire get put out. Because actually, I mean, I would take it in two senses. One is I know that can't happen. Because whenever they begin the beguine, it wakes up again. You know, it keeps happening. So I know it's going to. And also, it seems to me, I don't actually want it to go out. I just want it to stay down there, but, you know, an ember, not a fire. And what does a fire do? It burns. This is the only use of this metaphor here, but it burns me. I can't stand this burning. And notice, let it sleep like the dead desire. Notice here, it brings back a memory evergreen. It's evergreen. But now he's saying, let it sleep like a dead desire, right? But I only, now notice the grammar of it. I bet you most people aren't aware of this when they hear the song. The dead desire, I only remember when they begin the beguine. I remember it then. I don't remember it most of the time, but when they begin the beguine, I remember it. Isn't it beautiful? That's what the song is about. When that song starts, I remember all of this. Let it go down. Let it just be an ember that I only remember at those times. Beautiful. Oh, I mean, this is such a masterpiece. And I think about desire, that he's talking about love as a desire, but it is at its source. What is the first desire? It's called this in Infinite Intelligence, by the way. It's called the original desire. Who am I? That is the first desire. It's the whim of God, the root of it all. And that's where this whole thing comes from. Let the creation dissolve and be gone. Let there be Mahapralaya, the annihilation of the universe. Although, a little ember there still. Maybe just Pralaya, not Mahapralaya. He's calling for Pralaya, not Mahapralaya. So let it just sleep as a desire, because I can't go through all of that. And then there's this glorious, I don't know, he must be a schizophrenic. He's contradicting himself, is he not? Now he says, oh yes, what was I thinking? Right. But doesn't this really articulate our feelings about love? On the one hand, you want it. On the one hand, you can't, oh my God, I can't take it. But you want it. There's that duality. That's what part of the masterfulness of this song is, that it really expresses those ambivalent feelings. I can't endure it, but I have to have it. So now, Oh yes, let them begin the beguine. Make them play. Who is them? The orchestra. Right, they're the ones. We have a literal level here. We have the night of tropical splendor. We have an orchestra down by the shore. That scene is present throughout the whole song. So the last stanza, he's saying, hey, you guys, stop. No, start it, He started him up again. Anyway, there's a scene from Shakespeare it brings to mind, but I won't try to explain it. Let the stars that were once... What happened to the stars? The stars that were once before. Clouds came. So let the clouds get blown away. I want the stars back again. And the clouds are symbols of whatever ruptured that state of love. Return above you. And now we have another element. What happened in the past? You whispered to me, darling, I love you.
This is longing.
Yeah.
He wants to hear it back again.
Right. And I love you. That expression, when you have, a human beloved, everybody wants that to get said, don't they?
Yeah, sure.
Little words.
Those 3 little words. It's the most cliched thing in the whole world. But man, that doesn't stop people from wanting it. Yeah. So he's put it right in. He's put it right in. And once more, you did it before. Say it again. Say it again. I want that love once again. And now look at this. And we'll suddenly know what heaven we're in. What? I don't know how to... What is this? In other words, we'll know that we are in heaven. It's not that this will become heaven. We will know that it already is heaven.
It's already where you've been.
It's where we've always been all along. It's now. It's right here and now.
Yeah.
Now, I don't know where Cole Porter got this from. He must have really gotten, God must have whispered in his ear to give him this line. Because this seems to, yeah.
I heard from somebody, I think in the Bible world, or some metaphysical expert,
Yeah.
this melody is an ancient melody that Cole Porter somehow connected to the media, but it's a melody that's been on for, eons. So
I wouldn't be
it's
surprised.
just come in this form through Cole Porter.
Man, he got an inspiration when he wrote this thing. And this line of the lyric to me comes from a knowledge higher than any ordinary songwriter would get. That this is heaven means, in our metaphysics, this is God. He's talking about the original, actually, if we wanted to allegorize it, that original God state from which I was separated, into which I want to return. I'm sure he wasn't thinking about it that way, but he wrote a song that fully expresses it. He got such an inspiration that he did. So what heaven we're in, we'll suddenly know it. I will know I am God. When they begin the beguine, when they begin the beguine. What a lyric. Oh my God. So one of the things that this lyric does is it takes, this is about remembrance, right? It's all about remembrance. And we remember the name of God. We think of it as remembering. I'm really struck by that's how every tradition associates the name of God with remembering, as though it belongs to the past. Because, in fact, God does belong to our past. Before the beginning, we were one with God, and our souls know it. It may be billions of years ago, but we haven't forgotten that. And this song actually evokes that feeling. But what it does is it takes that ancient past and brings it and unites it with the moment of the immediate moment of now. That's what this song lyrically accomplishes. And there are very few love songs that reach this point. I wish we had more time to go over some of these others. So I'm just going to flash you just to point out some of the other things. If we had another 2 hours, or more time, I would be looking at this poem by Francis Bravazon, The Dawn Light Breaks, because this is one of the great lyrics, love lyrics of the English language. It's an utter masterpiece. Yeah, from the East-West Gathering. This is a real masterpiece. There's no implied narrative in it. Not all love songs have an implied narrative. All sorts of people have, yeah. And here's another of the greatest, let's see. I just want to draw your attention to it because you may not know it. St. John of the Cross wrote a poem called The Dark Night of the Soul that's one of the greatest love songs of the whole Western world. And it's definitely mystical.
There's a folk singer, Lorena McKenna, who has put music to it.
Beautiful version she wrote, yeah. I just want to read one stanza of it, but I don't know Spanish. Can anyone read it properly?
Yeah. En una noche oscura, con ansias, en amores inflamada, oh, di cosa venturada, sale sin ser notada, estando en mi casa sosegada.
Oh boy. Oh, I wish we had time to read. One of the greatest mystical love poems ever written, this one is. It's unbelievably beautiful. And just one last one I want to just point out to you. There's a ghazal by Simab. And this in Urdu. And this is what I would call a successful poem. Baba, it was sung before Baba in 1958. And after a number of stanzas, Baba stopped it and said, stop. And there was a long silence. And then Baba said, I have just given God realization to Simab.
Liberation. He said
Liberation?
Yeah.
That's a successful poem, huh? And
It's the best poet in the world.
the best. Let's just read the first couplet. Do you know Urdu? Anybody know Urdu? Okay, I can't read it well, but I'll just read it out in the translation of just this first couplet. Ab kya bataun main tere milne sa kya mila. Irfan gam hua mujhe dil ka pata mila. What can I say? What did I achieve when I met you? Now look at this. I got the knowledge of pain. I found the address of my heart. Fantastic.
Yeah.
Well, you guys, that's it for this year.